when you look at the people who actually engage in rape and crimes, they are colonial entities. Like people who are engaged in resistance, you're not going to engage in mass rape as in the resistance movement. The ability to engage in stuff like mass rape requires control. That's why you see colonial powers tend to do that. That's why you see the British Empire engaged in rape. That's why you see Israel engaged in rape. That's why you see the United States soldiers all over this country, all over the world engaged in rape. It is not something colonial movements do, despite what propaganda had convinced us. And everything that the West says is pure projection. I want to interject this because they always want to paint like Hamas and their enemies as being demonic rapists. Remember the Viagra super soldiers in Syria?
Yep.
They always.
Shit, I forgot about that. Oh my god, bro.
Yeah, I got a long memory, guys. I told you guys. I never forget these. This is the Viagra super soldiers, the mass rapes of October 7th. It's all projection. Like when you look at the people who actually engage in rape and crimes, they are colonial entities. Like people who are engaged in resistance, you're not going to engage in mass rape as in the resistance movement. The ability to engage in stuff like mass rape requires control. That's why you see colonial powers tend to do that. That's why you see the British Empire engaged in rape. That's why you see Israel engaged in rape. That's why you see the United States soldiers all over this country, all over the world engaged in rape. It is not something colonial movements do, despite what propaganda had convinced us. So the IDF, they rape so much, they can't even stop each other from raping each other. They can't stop from raping each other. They rape Palestinians to death. I know you're going to cover some story that happened in Africa, but I thought this happened not too long ago. This happens all the time. Another soldier was caught raping someone in occupied Japan, because you guys know Japan is occupied. Yeah. They got US bases all over the place. And you guys know this is a problem. Nico, I'll get you in here because I know you want to chime in. But you guys know this is a big problem. I forgot.
Yeah, that's true. It's true. I completely forgot about the US bases.
Yeah, and I want to show this first to set the stage for David, because this is a gigantic problem that no one talks about. And Pete Hegseth just gave a whole speech like, yo, this whole thing where you ruin someone's career because they're accused of a little bit of rape, we're not doing that shit no more. So, David, I'll pass to you. Look, U.S. soldier charged in Japan for rape. It was so big of a problem that the Japanese government called it out. They said, hey, man, you guys got to start doing this. You got to have some reforms to stop U.S. soldiers from just going to Tokyo and raping the shit out of people.
That's crazy, bro.
Which leads to your story, David. I want you to introduce it because you have U.S. soldiers that are engaging in rape in Africa. David, can you please explain what your investigative journalism found?
Well, so first of all, I think on Hotspots, I've actually covered a story like this before. It was about this thing you just mentioned about U.S. soldiers having this pattern of rape in Japan. Now, in that story, I mentioned that this actually goes back to the 40s. There was a village apparently in Okinawa where there was a scandal that took place after the end of the Second World War, when there was like direct occupation, where U.S. soldiers started going missing. And apparently what had happened was that the villagers had started secretly killing them and hiding the corpses.
Oh, that's so
because the U.S. soldiers had a habit of just walking into the village and just helping themselves to the young women there. So
Japan, not the country to fuck with when you come to stuff like that, bro.
Yeah,
that's the home of the ninjas, guys. Ninjas.
So it was a big thing then, and it's still a problem now, because apparently, like every few weeks, and those are just the ones you hear about. I was listening to something from a lady who works for a pressure organization there. She says there's more than 35 cases in the past 6 years alone that haven't even got to the point of being like heard in courts.
That's crazy.
Right. So it's an ongoing thing. Now, where this links to Kenya. Now, Kenya has this status as a major non-NATO ally in Africa, in East Africa. So essentially, it's the empire's biggest bitch.
Yeah, that's basically what it is.
Right? That's basically what it is, right? So, however, either the Kenyan government doesn't seem to be aware of the reality of what that relationship means, or, as is more likely, it's just a vassal government that does That's what it's told. Now, both the UK and the US have some of the largest military bases on the entire continent in Kenya. In fact, the British military basically uses like a large district of Kenya essentially as its training field, right? They're huge districts of Kenya where even local Kenyans aren't allowed because it's basically like military reservation. And it's not the Kenyan military, it's foreign militaries who go there to train, right? Now, in the course of the interactions between the people who live in these places, because these places are not, this is not empty land, right? People live there. People have lived there for thousands of years, right? And then, you know, some white guy came from the UK one day and said, this is our land now. And, you know, it's been fun since then. So what happens is, obviously there's rape, right? That's a given. Wherever there's an occupation force and there's a defenseless local population, there's rape. But what made this case so horrific was that, unlike in all the other cases, first of all, there's like this has been documented that it happens thousands of times. British soldiers routinely rape Kenyan women, and the Kenyan government is aware of it, and they just don't really seem to see it as that big a problem, to be honest. There's a whole thing. In fact, there was a story that came out today. There was a group of children. Well, they're not children anymore. They're a group of people whose parents are British soldiers, but they're born to Kenyan women in Kenya, and the British soldiers apparently came, had sex or raped their moms or whatever, and then went back to the UK and left them in Kenya. And they actually went to court to sue for their right to UK citizenship. They just won their case today. I'm just mentioning this to provide a background for how widespread this issue is. Now, what made this case so horrific was that the lady in question, so she was like first of all, she was a sex worker, or she was doing sex work, right? So as terrible as it sounds, there wasn't really any rationale for the rape. Right, this was a sex worker. Yeah, this was a sex worker.
Kenyan money and Kenyan currency at that. Like,
yeah, but apparently it's I don't know, like it's a power thing.
Exactly. That's exactly what I was gonna say.
So
it's just to show that I can do this and you can't do anything about it.
So this guy, this soldier, whose name has just been unsealed 13 years later, his name is Robert James Perkins. Apparently, he and his platoon or whatever, like, they basically took turns raping this woman, right? And then he apparently strangled her. So he stabbed her in her lungs. So basically, like, you know, if someone stabs you in your lungs, you're basically gonna drown to death in your own blood. Mm-hmm. So basically stabbed her and then tossed her into a septic tank. And she basically drowned in shit. Tossed her in when she was still alive. Right. That's how horrific this was. And so the case investigation files have just been made public. And in those investigation files, you can see where on his Facebook page, he and his platoon members the morning after were making jokes about it on a public Facebook page. Using words like septic tank, and then using a meme from Family Guy where Stewie is looking down into a grave.
What? They do are psychotic, man. That's why they sign up for the military, man. I tell you, they psychotic, crazy people. This is why I say fuck the troop, guys. I'm not down with that military warfare. Fuck the troops. But go ahead, David. They're psychotic.
This happened in 2012. And it wasn't even investigated. It was reported, but it wasn't even investigated until 2016. And then the British did what all imperial entities do. They covered their ass. So they basically quietly pushed him out of the military, but nothing really happened to him. By this time, he was back home. He got into a whole new career. He, went into IT. He got married, apparently. So he's supposed to be some sort of respectable, military veteran now,
British shit ever, bro.
With a whole career, and he's just literally been named last week. So he basically got away with this for 13 years, and it's just last week the Kenyan High Court finally issued an international arrest warrant, which the British authorities probably are not going to honor.
Yeah, they're probably not.
So
Yeah, I mean, Great Britain finances a lot of Kenya's infrastructure and military, right?
military, yes, definitely not
Yeah.
infrastructure, but military,
So
yes.
yeah, so we're not gonna do shit. That basically is what's gonna happen. That's like, oh man, and they're not gonna hold them accountable there
Yeah.
because
So
they view all actions that are made public committed by a Brit. They view it as a reflection of all of Britain. That's how they've kind of always operated. So they're not gonna. Yeah. Oh man, it's just disgusting. Honestly.
so why I think this matters so much is that Africa is existing in a uniquely dangerous situation now where it seems like lines are being drawn in the sand every day. The world is obviously preparing for war. That much is clear. We don't know when this war is going to happen, but it's clear that it's going to happen at some point. Probably it's already started and we just don't recognize it as such. And Africa, with or without its consent, is being carved up as a major battleground in that war. And for whatever reason, many national governments, be they puppets or whatever, still don't seem to get it, that they're in a uniquely dangerous situation. So in Kenya's case, for example, why are you being a major non-NATO ally? What is the rationale at this point in time? So you're surrounded by neighbors who are very friendly with China, very, very friendly with China. And then you go and take up this status as essentially the US empire's chief vassal in Africa, and you are bordered by three countries that overnight basically become borderline hostile towards you. Why are you doing that? You're hosting their military bases, you're doing joint military training exercises, you're buying Western military equipment, which is, I think, one of the worst mistakes you can make as a military in the global South. Because if you buy military equipment from them, basically they have kill switches and everything.
Yeah.
Also,
so you
you're
can't
going to fucking Haiti. You're sending your soldiers to Haiti because the U.S. doesn't want to be seen.
Exactly. So Kenya in particular, I think Kenya and Nigeria are the two worst offenders in Africa, but Kenya in particular, it's like it's setting itself up for something terrible. And for whatever reason, everyone just seems perfectly okay with it.
And another thing that's is a big problem with this is that it allowed the United States to control your sovereignty. So I was looking into this as you were speaking, David, and look at what Donald Trump is using against Kenya to impose their own geopolitical will. I don't know how much you looked into this, but I've seen a few headlines that said this. You guys see how they're using their status as a NATO ally to control Kenya's fate? U.S. reevaluates Kenya's NATO status amid concerns over China ties. And there's all these articles over the last few weeks where Marco Rubio in the State Department is putting massive pressure on William Ruto to cut ties from China. You guys see how these agreements always come with
a dumb ass that is stupid. That is what
and then you should ask the question, what are these ties in question? Because it's not military ties. It's infrastructure.
Usually, yeah.
Yeah.
But
China is building roads and rails and bridges, the most basic stuff that grows an economy. Yeah. And they're like, no, that's not for you. That's not for you. You're not supposed to be building stuff that lifts you out of poverty. You are supposed to be poor. That's your role. And it's like everyone is like, oh yeah, cool. The US has said it, so must be right.
My question is, so given everything you just said, David, you just got surrounded by three countries that became effectively hostile overnight. You are in a bad situation because, like you said, economically, y'all aren't well off, and you are never going to be part of this partnership that is building all around you. And because of your status as a vassal state, and the only thing you benefit really from the NATO powers that are controlling you is the military, your military might. But okay, maybe against one country, maybe against two, but you ain't about to handle all three of them. Not those countries.
No, you're not. Absolutely not.
They out there fight okay, so now Trump and Rubio's dumbass is let's threaten this fake vassal status because this sound familiar, guys? Ukraine. Ukraine getting into NATO anytime soon? Absolutely not. And those three countries just spent how much time, how much money, and how many lives, and how many years getting NATO out of their countries. So what do you think would happen if Kenya would have officially joined NATO? That's already like grounds for war, and I wouldn't be surprised if it started because of that. So now you're like, oh, if y'all continue to work with China, we're going to take away the NATO status that y'all motherfuckers don't even have. So now if I'm Kenya, hey China, man, like what's good? Like let's talk a little bit more, because these motherfuckers is tripping. You're incentivizing me to go work with China more. Like what? Yeah,
it's a panic move, Nico, because it's something like, man, we losing Kenya to China, even though we did everything we can to introduce William Ruto into this sphere of acceptable Western leaders. And it's extremely pathetic because in order to get this position, and I covered this before, and I know you covered this as well, David, William Ruto sent against orders from his own Supreme Court. He sent Kenyan police officers to fight and die in Haiti. So his people,
they got their asses handed to them too, didn't they? I just wanted to clarify that. Like they got their asses handed to them, didn't they?
They're dying.
Crazy, bro. That's nuts.
So you're a leader, and you send your instead of protecting your own people, you sending your police officers to fight and die for what? U.S. imperialism? For French imperialism to honor the U.S. presence in Haiti? Like, what do you guys do? This is what a lot of these South African leaders are doing, and they realize they are pawns in the United States scheme, but they don't care. As long as they are giving and they are allowed a reign of power, they will continue to sell them people.
Hold on, they came out and said they're turning their international language into French.
That was in Uganda.
Uganda. Oh, okay.
Yeah, I want to share an update. I know Nico has a story. We're about 90 minutes in. I don't want to keep you guys too long on a Friday night, so I want to give Nico a chance to share a story. But David, look at how on the money we was. How on the money you was. Because as we're live right now, I'm going to give you a quick update. Israel's already starting to bomb the shit out of Gaza. Furious as hell about this ceasefire deal. And everyone, just a quick update. Everyone in Israel essentially calling for the continuation of this war after seeing what Trump and Hamas did. So it will be very interesting to see how Trump tries to save face